All right, we're going to start a new chapter today in math. It's going to be on understanding percentages, and this whole chapter 6 is on percentages. All right, and understanding them and using them and working with them and figuring out what percentages. All right, I'm going to do this without my computer today because I'm just having so much difficulty with it. So here we go. Please open your books to page 274. That's where you should be. All right, I'm going to flip the screen around. All right, percents make ratios. We've talked about ratios already. We've talked about proportions. All right, now we're going to kind of use them. All right, so you notice that you have your, over here, you have a little rendition, so to speak, a model of a room. You have a bed, a desk, and a bureau, which is another word for a dresser. All right, when we're talking about percentages, a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. All right, 100 being a complete, something that's complete. So you can think of this model here. If you notice the dimensions, it's a 10 by 10. 10 times 10 is 100. So if you counted all those little tiny squares, you'd come up with 100 squares. Okay, so this floor plan shows a bedroom with an area of 100 feet squared. That's what foot squared means. It's a square, and you can put all these little tiny squares in there, and it would be 100. All right. Now we're going to find the percent of the floor space needed for each piece of furniture. All right, count the number of grid spaces for each piece. So if you counted in here, all the little squares, how many are there? Well, for the bed, there's 28. No, so that's in your book, 28 out of the 10. Remember, we're talking about ratios, not percent, not fractions, ratios. So it's 28 squares out of the 100 squares total. So that is actually 28% of the room is taken up by the bed. Okay, so what about the dresser? Well, if you counted the little squares of the dresser, there were 10 little squares. So there's 10 squares out of the 100 squares, which it means it's 10% of the room is occupied by the dresser. The desk is only 8 squares, so therefore it's only 8% of the room. All right. Now what I want you to do is add those measurements up. The bed, the bureau, and the desk. Add up the number of squares they all were. What did you come up with? Okay, then I want you to take that answer. Okay, so if you add them all up, I'm making you go crazy here, aren't I? Moving my camera around. Let's see, 28 plus 10 plus 8, you came up with should come up with 46. So the bed, the desk, and the bureau, total, they take up 46 squares out of the 100. So you could write that as a ratio. All right, 48 out of 100. Like so. Okay. That's how much of the room is being used. So how much of the room is left? Quick check number 1, ask that question. Write a ratio and a percent to represent the unused floor space. So if you have 48 squares are being used, how are you going to find out what is not being used? Okay, the best way to do that is to do 100 minus, you can do this on your calculator, 48, and you should come up with 54. Okay? So, you have 54 squares that are not being used. How do you like the reflection there? Okay. So, if the directions tell you to write a ratio and a percentage. So, here's my ratio. Put this 54 over 100. Right there. And my percent is what? Well, 54 out of 100 is the same as 54%. All right? All right, that's for quick check number 1. Then quick check number 2 says model, you have a model that's 80% and it's on a 10 by 10 grid. All right? Just like we did up here. Now, what you should have for this lesson, hopefully you have some in your house, is some graph paper. If you don't have any graph paper, you don't need to go to the store and buy some right away, but it is the easiest to draw. If we're going to do some drawing, obviously having graph paper would be the easiest. Let's see, all right, I have some graph paper here. And so if they want you to model something, 80% on a 10 by 10 grid. So you're going to have over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's my grid. I have 10 this way, and I have 10 this way. Okay? If I have 80% of it, how many squares am I going to color? Or, yeah, color in. Well, we're going to do 80 squares out of the 100. So if I know there's 10 here, so that's 10, I'm going to count by 10s then. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. So that's 80% of that square has been shaded blue. All right. Okay, so I want you to look at page 275. At the top, this is very important, right at the top here. Okay, so the factors of 100 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 25, 50, and 100. Meaning you can take any one of these numbers and divide them into 100, and you're going to come up with an even answer. Okay, so any ratio written as a fraction with a denominator that is a factor of 100 is easy to write as a percent. I'm going to explain that in a minute. Look down here at these graphs or grids. Letter A. These little squares, if you count them up, it's a 10 by 10 grid. All right. So what's the shaded area? It's 20 squares out of the 100. So that's 20%. But look at over here. Notice the denominator is not 100 now, it's 10. But 10 is one of these factors up here. So that means that what we can do is you can use a common multiple to write an equivalent ratio. Remember how we've been doing that? So 10 times what equals 100? 10 times 10 equals 100. So therefore, when I do the bottom, I must do the top. 2 times 10 is 20. So you have 20%. All right? What about this last one? You see there's only 5 lines or bars, and 5, notice also, is one of our factors of 100. So I know that I can multiply 5 times something to get up to 100. So what is it? 5 times what equals 100?